Hey there everyone, this is Samuel Johnson, and welcome back to the Spider-Verse Retrospectives, and today we're going to be continuing our discussion on the Extreme Venomverse miniseries as we take a look at Extreme Venomverse number 3. So, what gaggle of Venoms will we be meeting today? Well, for our first story, we're going to go back in time a bit, to a more prehistoric era, as, well, we'll be seeing the story of Venom, well, told through a primitive lens, so to speak. In this case, we enter a reality where the one bonded to a symbiote is a female variant of Eddie Brock's son, Dylan Brock. Only in this world she's called Dylan with two N's, and well, Dylan's kind of a black sheep. Basically the Eddie Brock of this reality was a loser, much like in many other universes. But because he was a loser, he had a lot of bad luck, and as a result, the tribe thought he was cursed. And so when he died, they kicked his daughter out because they thought that she was just as cursed, and they wanted nothing to do with that. So Dylan kind of found herself on the run, living by herself. But she had hope because, well, her father always said that she had a great destiny, that there was something was planned for her in the future, something great and amazing, and so she always lived life believing that. And well, one night those prayers were answered as, while she was resting by a fire and minding her own business, something fell out of the sky and crash landed near her, which sent her and a nearby saber-toothed cat flying and knocking them out. And from the crater of whatever crashed out of the sky, we see a symbiote come crawling out, searching for a host. And sure enough, it finds Dylan there, and well, it chooses her as its host, bonding with her and transforming her into this reality's version of Venom, who in this case, Black Fang, a more tribal, more feral version of Venom, who let me see if I can find a good picture of Black Fang. She does look pretty cool. Yeah, gotta find a good shot. This is Black Fang, which I like. She's a very more, like I said, more of a tribalistic Venom, from her outfit to her face looking more like a saber-toothed cat. She does look more like an animal rather. She looks more like like a feral animal than a person. I dig it. As such, bonded with the symbiote, Dylan essentially, I don't want to say she's a protector, but she's a lot more lethal creature, and she and her symbiote, of course, form a bond as you do when you have a symbiote, and, well, it's a good time that she bonded with her when she did, because, well, Dylan's tribe is in danger. Because while this may be a more primitive time in Earth's history, there are still more advanced alien races out there that think, hey, these guys are easy pickings, let's go take them. And so other aliens besides the symbiote have come to Earth, specifically the Kree Empire, who are here to kidnap humans so that they can utilize their, well, unique genetic makeup to create warriors in their battle with the Skrulls. And, well, while Dylan may have been outcast from these people, she still has some kind of connection to them, and so wants to go in and kick ass for the sake of her people. And so that's what she does, as she runs in her Black Fang jammies, and then just starts slicing and dicing all of the Kree, just killing them all one by one and leaving their bodies strewn all over the place, though unfortunately for her, the Kree did not come unprepared, as a robot comes in that actually ends up being kind of a match for Dylan. And while she's able to mostly outmaneuver it, ultimately the robot almost overpowers her, though before it does, she manages to cause a bit of damage. Unfortunately, the robot has got her into kind of a bear hug, and before she can deliver the coup de grace, though, someone saves her, as a laser comes up and manages to blast the robot's head off. Though unfortunately, while the robot is defeated, Dylan is knocked unconscious in the battle. However, when she wakes up, she soon comes face to face with her savior. Again, the Anne Weying version of Agent Venom, who came here, of course, to recruit Dylan to their cause. But thanks to their symbiotes intermingling, it allows Anne and Dylan to actually talk with one another. However, as Dylan's getting her bearings and getting back up, the people of her tribe realize that, hey, this thing with the black gooey skin that saved us, it was Dylan, the person we cast out. And at first, she's all happy to see them because she wants to tell them, see, I was destined for greatness, I saved you guys, it's all good. Then they start chucking rocks at her. Yeah, the tribe's still a bunch of paranoid d-bags who still are superstitious enough to believe that Dylan is the cause of all these problems. That it was because of her that those beings came down and enslaved them, and that as long as she stays here, more invaders will come and take them, and blah blah blah. Point is, they still hate her, and this just cements their irrational fear of her. As such, Dylan quickly realizes that it doesn't matter what she'll do, they're still gonna hate her, and so she kind of suits up, so to speak, as she just proclaims that they don't deserve her. As such, Anne kind of takes Dylan away as she says that, yeah, her tribe may have turned on her, but that's part of why she's here. She wants to recruit her for another tribe that will accept her, and the story ends with Dylan happily accepting as they travel off for Black Fang to join the Venom army. So there you go. As for the second story, I'm trying to think, what was it again? Hold on, give me a second. Sorry, had a brain fart. In this case, the second story does go back to a universe that we have visited before in previous Spider-Verse stories. Specifically, the world of the Web-Slinger, the cowboy variant of Spider-Man. And the story actually begins with him just kind of traveling the desert. Basically, he's been traveling for quite a long time, and, well, he's a little low on supplies. Specifically, he needs to stop for a drink, and he's kind of running out of time. And thankfully, he does manage to find a small town that he thinks that he can kick up, relax, or at least it's a ranch, I think. And while he is initially put off, because as he's going out, he finds what looks like a dead man who has been tied to either a cactus or a sign and left to die for the crows to pick at him. Well, at this point, good old Ponderosa Parker is kind of on his last legs, and he's not going to be picky right now. So he does go into the ranch. And not a moment too soon, because as he goes in, it turns out that the ranch kind of doubles as a bordello. And, well, one of the customers of the bordello is a lot more physical than some would like, as we see a girl from said bordello running outside and her being pursued by her paying client who wants to pretty much just beat the shit out of her, because I'm guessing that's what gets his rocks off. And, well, she doesn't want anything to do with it, and so he's just angry and wants to do even more to her, but ultimately the bouncer for this place, a man by the name of Edward, comes up and just gets in between this guy and the girl and just tells this drunken douchebag to get lost. Of course, the guy's like, I'm a paying customer. You treat the product better than the customer. And Edward just says, yeah, of course we do. Now get lost. But the guy is still not taking no for an answer, as he threatens that if he gets thrown out, he'll come back later with all of his men, with more men, and they'll burn this place to the ground. But again, Edward tells him to piss off, and so the guy in a last ditch effort tries pulling a knife on them. But before he gets a chance to stab anyone, a gunshot rings out and knocks a knife out of his hand, and the one that did it was the web slinger, who promptly falls unconscious right there. As such, what he did was enough to scare the guy off, and as a show of thanks, Edward and this girl do bring the web slinger in and do kind of help revive him, get him back up and running, heal him. And so he wakes up in a nice lavish bed with Edward sitting over him, just kind of examining his gun. As such, Edward and the web slinger exchange greetings and names, with the web slinger just introducing himself as Parker. And so Edward thanks him for helping him, that they're much obliged, and the owner of this establishment would like to see the web slinger. And so as he gets dressed and all that, he heads out, and all the girls are thanking the web slinger for helping them out. But eventually, Edward leads the web slinger to the private room of the owner of this establishment, a woman by the name of Madame Brock, or Edna, as she wants to be called. And so she calls the web slinger in, tells Edward to leave, and it turns out that Edna, the good Miss Brock, is a bit of a, I want to say, a wild card, so to speak. Basically, she has slight mystical precognitive abilities. Well, sort of. She basically, rather than actually being full psychic, she just knows how to read the tarot cards. And so she was expecting the web slinger, knowing that at some point he would come in, though some details were a little vague to her. When it came down to it, she had no idea the web slinger would be coming in saving one of her girls. And on top of that, she also is aware that anything that they would want to do to repay the web slinger, he wouldn't take, as he's too humble, and all he really wants to do is just get some supplies, get a drink or two, and then be on his way. And so Madame Brock does say that she can accommodate, but in the middle of the talk, one of her girls comes up and says that the drunken D-bag from earlier is back, and he made good on his threat. He's back with friends, and they plan to burn this place to the ground. As such, since the web slinger is still the local superhero, he goes outside to meet them, but Madame Brock goes with him. And so as the pair go to confront these people who are holding torches, we soon get a taste of who exactly the Venom of this world is. And if you couldn't tell based on the names here, Edna Brock is actually this world's Venom. Although her Venom Sona is a very different one when compared to most other variants of the character. As in this case, rather than having a symbiote, she has a veil. As when she goes into battle, she pulls the veil over her, and the veil has a monstrous face on it. And when she puts it on, her speech balloon turns into the typical twisted black one that you would see with someone who's bonded to a symbiote, and she becomes a lot more feral, a lot more angry, and she carries a whip that can really do some damage. And hell, even at the beginning of the story, we saw her using the whip on a poor guy. It was the guy that the web-slinger saw tied up and having the crows eat at him when he arrived. So yeah, she just unleashes her wild side as she just starts whipping left and right all the guys that came here, and before any of them can even recover, the web-slinger is able to shoot a few webs from his guns to keep them stuck to the ground. As such, he offers to go get the local sheriff and have these guys arrested, but this is Madame Venom's property, and quite frankly, she and her girls have their own means of dispensing justice. And well, that's when her girls come out carrying shotguns, and well, let's just say that those guys aren't going to be troubling the good Miss Brock's establishment anytime soon. As such, it cuts to the next day, and while Edna is trying to defend her actions to the web-slinger, since this is her property, he just kind of tells her it's really none of his business. It's not how he does things, it's not how he wants to ever do things, but it's, again, her business, and ultimately but again, it's not his business. It's her property. How she defends it is up to her. It's just not how he would do it. And while she does say that not to knock it till she tries it, he just kind of tells her he tells her that he needs to get on the road. Though as the good Miss Brock sends him off, she says that the next time they meet, she might not actually let him go. But ultimately it's just kind of formal farewells as the web slinger gets on his horse and rides off with Madame Brock just waving him goodbye. However, once the web slinger is gone, well, she tells someone that's waiting nearby shadows to come out, as Miss Brock has been expecting her. And sure enough, the one waiting in the shadows was the Anne-Wing Agent Venom, who's dressed in a very appropriate attire for the era. She's wearing a dress, though it's clear that she was at least using her symbiote at least a second ago. Either way, she's here to recruit Madame Brock to rejoin the Venom army, and she says that she's already aware of this and she's in, because after all, she has the cards, so they tell her everything. So there's that story. As such, the final story does actually look at a version of Venom that we kind of sort of have seen in previous works, though again I haven't really read about. In this case, it's the story of Venom Space Knight. So, remember when I talked about Flash Thompson being bonded to the Venom symbiote at one point? Well, during the time that he had said symbiote, he decided to travel in space with the Guardians of the Galaxy, becoming Venom Space Knight. And while him being bonded to the symbiote did cause some issues for both him and the Guardians, as the symbiote didn't always behave, but basically he did for a while in the Marvel Universe, that was Venom / Flash Thompson's shtick. And in this universe, well, he kept doing it. As in this reality, we see Venom Space Knight as he's in the middle of dealing with intergalactic I want to say intergalactic organ grinders, so to speak. Basically, these people these organ traders just travel to planets on the outskirts of the universe, grab the civilizations there as the law is looser here, and people will be asking less questions, and they pretty much just chop up everyone they find and then sell their organs on the intergalactic black market. And well, Agent Venom Space Knight has a bit of a problem with something like that, and so the story is basically him just coming in and duking it out with the head of this whole operation, a tiger man by the name of Titus or Titus. I don't know. It's not said out loud. I'm assuming it's Titus. Either way, the two of them end up duking it out. And basically from there, the story is just a battle. As Venom is duking it out with Titus tries overpowering him. He briefly puts him on the conveyor belt where they carve up people, and ultimately, thanks to the help of the symbiote, Flash is able to overcome it and actually overcomes Titus. And in a bid to try and get rid of Venom, he opens the airlock for the ship, which does stop the fight, but it also kills Titus. So kind of sucks for him. But ultimately, by flying into space, unfortunately for Venom, as he's floating through space, he gets caught in the gravitational pull of a nearby planet, and while he does survive the fall down, it was still a bumpy journey, especially since flying into a planet's atmosphere will make things hot, and since symbiotes aren't exactly good with heat, it does nearly kill him. The majority of the force applied to this is blunted by the fact that he's able to reshape his body into like a little rocket, but ultimately it still hurts like hell when he lands. Thankfully, though, there is someone waiting on the planet for him, as the N-Wing Agent Venom is there, and once again wants to recruit this version of Agent Venom, or recruit this version of Venom Space Knight to join the Venom Army. So there you go. And, well, there's also a little thing in the back of the comic that's supposed to be a parody of those new strip comics that you would read, except the titular characters are symbiote variants of characters, so whatever. Point is, it's cute, funny, and kind of a fun. It's cute and funny, so I like it. But either way, yeah, that's this issue. My thoughts on the stories. Well, first let's look at the Black Fang story. And this one is again, honestly, a unique take on the symbiote story. This story once again plays on the things that I love when it comes to parallel universes. Taking a character and placing them in a different element, a different setup, a different status quo, but showcasing how the character would develop in said scenario. Case in point, I like the idea of the Venom symbiote arriving on Earth back when the world is very primitive, when people didn't really have any preconceptions about space, the final frontier, and life beyond the stars. Hell, when Dylan winds up bonding with the symbiote of this universe, she at first thinks that it's like a demon or a god or something, and it's only through the symbiote bonding with her and kind of opening her mind to newer ideas that she's able to kind of realize that no, that's not the case. It's just another life form that's lost like me. It's a similar case of the Kree. Part of the reason why Dylan's people were able to be taken down so easily by the Kree was because like Dylan, they thought they were gods from space who came for some greater ascension, only to realize too late that they actually meant to do them harm. And so as a result, it makes for unique. That makes for unique set. I don't want to say setup, but unique perspective on these elements that for us are regular established elements in these stories, but are new and different concepts for the beings that inhabit this universe. And so I kind of like seeing how they adapt to it, how they interpret them, and how they see them. When Dylan wound up duking it out with one of the Kree robots, she thought it was just like a metal soul. She didn't think it was a robot. She thought it was a shiny soldier. And again, her symbiote had to tell her this thing can be taken down. They just have to work together to do it. So I very much like that. And even then, the idea of having a feral Venom is pretty unique. And I like how they kind of, once again, twist the whole story. As it's not just Venom set in a prehistoric era, that's the whole setup for the story. It's also the characters. Like I said, the person who wears the symbiote in this reality is not this world's Eddie Brock. It's this world's variant of Dylan Brock, who in this world is a girl rather than a boy, like in many other universes. So again, it's a double twist on the whole idea on how Venom operates. And so seeing how this version of Venom evolves into Black Fang, how she utilizes the powers, what her motivations are, I do kind of like it. And it does what I also kind of like is kind of the dark twist at the end. Throughout the story, Dylan always kind of had a sense of optimism when it came to her place in the world. Now, despite the fact that her dad was labeled as cursed, she still had things she wanted to fight for, things she wanted to do, and ultimately she still believed in her people and that she'd have a place there one day. Even to the point where when her people were threatened, she was ready to jump in and help them even though they had called her an outcast. And so by the end, you think that her going in and saving them from these alien invaders, making sure they didn't get sold into slavery, that would maybe net her some brownie points, right? No. At the end of the day, these are very primitive people who are very much paranoid and scared of anything that they consider different. And ultimately, while Dylan did help them in her symbiote form, she looks like a monster. Of course they'd be scared of her. And so in their eyes, they don't see her as a great savior, that very much made sure that they weren't sold into, they weren't used and tortured by invaders. They see her as her as an even greater monster. They blame her for all this. Yeah, she may not have directly caused it, but they just think that her mere presence attracted these fuckers, and so they blame her for everything and still consider her an outcast. It's honestly pretty sad, and makes for a tragic story, especially when by the end Dylan has to accept I'm alone, and the only person that I have for me is my other. And so by the end of the story, when she just goes full Black Fang and tells her tribe that they can fuck right off for all she cares, it does make for a sad ending, because throughout all this, her dreams were shattered. She believed she was destined for something great, and she kind of was. But even when she achieves that greatness, her people still just see her as nothing more than an outcast and cursed. So it's sad. It's sad. I'll give you that. But it does offer at least some bit of hope in the end when the Anne Wing version of Agent Venom comes in and offers her a place in the army. So I at least like that. But otherwise, the story itself is again a creative twist on the story of Venom, with unique setting and with a unique twist on the characters. A nice way of kind of showcasing how this version of Venom kind of operates in the world. Offering a nice little story with Dylan, as she wants to be a part of her tribe but is an outcast, and ultimately has an honestly sad ending that, despite all of Dylan's hopes and beliefs that she'll eventually become a part of her tribe again, she's still seen as the outcast. So it still is sad in that regard, and I like it. So I like it. As for then we have the Madam Venom story, and this one again is unique. This one I find to be very interesting, because unlike most versions of Venom in the multiverse, Madam Venom's shtick, it doesn't come from her being bonded to a symbiote. Rather, it's more something mystical. I can't really say if the veil that she puts on when she becomes Madam Venom is alive or not. They don't ever state that it's alive. And ultimately, while this does signify her as this world's variant of Venom, we can't really tell if the veil is just a gimmick she wears to scare people, or ultimately something else, because clearly Edna Brock does have some hint of mysticism to her. She practices tarot and is very much aware and very much can predict when events are going to happen based on what cards she's dealt. It worked so well that she actually expected the appearance of both the Web Slinger and the Anne Wing Agent Venom. Hell, she even expected that douchebag to come back. She knew that he wasn't bluffing, so she prepared. But likewise, it still kind of gives you a sense. It kind of makes you feel. It makes you question what her status as a Venom truly is. Does the veil enhance her abilities? Is it just a tool? Are these vicious feelings always a part of her, and she has to just keep them subdued and she lets them out when she puts the hood on? Or is the hood somehow bringing that dark side of her out? Is it mystical, or is it just a piece of cloth? I don't know. But what I do know is that it marks her as this world's variant of Venom. And quite frankly, I kind of like it. It's very, very different than most other versions of Venom, but that's what draws you in, because you're asking questions about how this version of Venom operates. Does she actually have superpowers, or is it all just a gimmick? Is she just very good with obviously, like I said, she's obviously good with tarot cards, but does she have any real mystical powers beyond them? It draws you in and makes you curious. And the fact that when she's first introduced, we just kind of see her sitting in a dark room with a spider emblazoned on her wall. Her just sitting there in her chair, wearing nothing but black clothes, but looking kind of smug and smirking as she's talking to the Web Slinger. It very much draws you in and makes you want to learn more about her. There is something to her, something kind of on a different level than most other Venoms in the multiverse, and I like it. It's very interesting. And what I also love love is that in place of of Venom's tongue, she has the whip, which again, that's actually pretty cool. I like that. And again, the story very much showcases just how vicious she really is. When the beginning of the story has her brutalizing a guy with her whip and then stringing him up outside of her ranch, just as either as a warning or a threat, something, or yes, those are both things. Either way, it's enough to pretty much just tell anyone, don't fuck with us. So clearly it does create a sense of unease with her. And even by the end, while she and the web slinger are on good terms, you do get a hint of, well, for lack of a better term, venom in her words. That, yeah, she is grateful to the web slinger for all she's done, but there's a bit of possessiveness in how she talks. Like, she is grateful for the web slinger for helping out. Very grateful. And you get a sense that if she were allowed, she would keep him. There's a part of her that would love to keep this guy around, if not just either because she thinks that she owes him for the good that he did, or because she thinks he'd be a valuable asset, or she just likes him. I don't know. Point is, there's something under the surface, something more sinister with her that definitely kind of keeps you on edge. At the end of the day, you don't think that she's untrustworthy. It's just that you don't think she's untrustworthy. The only real time that she lets out her dark side is if you piss her off and do something bad. So at the very least, if you behave yourself and are nice around her, you won't have to fear her wrath. But ultimately, when she does let that side of her out, that's when you need to be afraid. So I like that. It's a very unique. I do like that. It's very mysterious, but also very unique. It doesn't really give enough answers to who she is as a Venom, but it does leave enough open so that you're able to that you are curious and want to see more. And likewise, I do like that her part of her story involves her actually meeting the web slinger. When it comes down to alternate Venoms, when it comes down to alternate Venoms in both this story and the previous Venomverse story, they're mostly kind of detached from their world's versions of Spider-Man, which, again, kind of makes sense. These stories are supposed to be mostly exclusively focused on Venom, and to my knowledge, the only time these stories have actually interacted with their world's versions of the webhead are typically if he's a part of that world's Venom story. Like in the previous Venomverse storyline, where one of the Venoms that was summoned was a version of Spidey who still was bonded to the symbiote. Or in the first issue of this miniseries, where the first story focused on a version of Eddie Brock who took on the mantle of Spider-Man when Peter died, getting rid of the symbiote. So those are unique takes, but I do like that when they set up Madame Venom, they establish her in an already pre-established universe with the web slinger. It expands more on his universe while still allowing us to see more of this new variant of Venom. So in that regard, it not only tells this unique story focusing on this brand new variation of the twisted web slinger, but also expands on a already pre-established continuity with a character that we already know. So again, I dig it. I like that. I like that we're seeing more of the web slinger. I like that we're seeing more variants of a lot of Spidey's rogues gallery here, especially with Madame Venom. So on the whole, creating an interesting dynamic with her, leaving enough questions in the air to make you want to see more of her, immediately drawing you with mysteriousness and kind of a friendly yet venomous demeanor. Overall, second story is a good one. Like I said, nice to see this world revisited, and it's nice. And the version of Venom they set up here is definitely one that I think would be very intriguing to see in future stories. So dig it. As for the Venom Space Knight story, it's alright. I think it's the weakest of the stories, all things considered, because ultimately, there's really not much to it. It's just a simple superhero beatdown, as we see Agent Venom dealing with these organ grinders as they kidnap people and are pretty much just ripping them apart to sell their parts to the highest bidder. And yeah, that's horrific, and that's very much horrific and needs to be stopped. But at the end of the day, it's nothing really too deep. It's just Venom Space Knight versus these twisted scumbags, and ultimately it's fun. It's a fun story. Just seeing him coming in, kicking ass, almost getting beaten before a symbiote gives Flash Thompson the edge to take this guy down. It's cool, and it shows him still being competent, utilizing the symbiote well, especially when he's able to mold his arms into weapons. Ultimately, it's just a alright story. Nothing too great about it. It's just kind of alright. Nothing too, at the end, it's entertaining enough. It's entertaining enough in that regard. It's just, there's nothing really much to it. It's just Venom Space Knight kicking ass, fighting bad guys and ultimately coming out on top. So nothing, again, not a lot to it, but maybe it doesn't need any more. So overall, all right story. So yeah, I think that's really all I have to say. Again, first story, intriguing concept as with some unique takes, setups, and twists on the variations of Venom in that reality. Second story, cool, a nice way of expanding on the Web Slingers universe while also setting up a very new and unique variant of Venom. And finally, the third story, an all right one that I think is only interesting because I think it's just a fun superpowered beatdown between Venom and these scumbag douchebags and these scumbag douches. So yeah, I think that's really all I have to say. I hope you enjoyed the video. I thank you for watching, and I hope to see you next Tuesday as we look at issue 4 of this miniseries. So to then, I hope you have a good evening and take care.